Good evening, Jules here for the confidence conversation. I will do my usual check to make sure that this is all working. And as you can probably see, for those of you who are regular viewers, I'm just going to have a little fiddle with my phone as opposed to my hair for a change. And let me just fiddle with that. And then check to make sure that this is going live and it's all happening. Yes, fantastic. Now, I'm not sure how many people are actually going to be able to join this this live this evening, because I know most people are very used to these the confidence conversation episodes going out on a Monday night, and due to unforeseen circumstances last night, I was not able to broadcast. So, namely the M62 being, which is a motorway in the UK, being very slow due to heavy rain and snow and all sorts of joyous things like that. So I got back too late and I couldn't pull over to be able to broadcast from my car. So, good evening. For those of you who are joining, then if you are joining live, then do pop your name down below. Just say hi so I can give you a shout out. I have probably eaten my dinner a little bit too fast, hence the coughing, so I do apologise. And as you can see, I'm at the office. I'm not at home where I usually broadcast from, as I'm working late this evening, so I thought I'd stay in the office, treat myself to a dinner here, and and crack on basically. So the kind of format for the confidence conversations is to offer up a topic and start a discussion about that topic. So a discussion isn't just about me going and this and this and this and this. This really is an invitation for those of you that are on here live. Hi Becky, to do exactly as Becky has just done, which is first of all to drop by and say hi, but also to as I'm going through various different things, is to let me know your thoughts. Let me know, what's happening for you as we're having the discussion. Is it bringing up more questions? Have you got other areas that you want to talk about? Because this really is about for you and how best I can support you with the information, the teachings, the insights, the experience that I've had over the last 11 years running my own coaching practice, and probably now, I was trying to work this out the other day, I haven't quite managed it yet, probably interacting very easily to be able to say well into the thousands with people that I've worked with in workshops, one-to-ones, etc. So a lot of the things that I've learned, I know have really made a difference for my life, and especially when we're in situations as we are at the moment, where it seems that there's a lot of things happening, at least from my perspective, my viewpoint, and I do know from a lot of people that I've been talking to that there seems to be a lot going down for people. And actually, I'm not just talking about on the global stage, actually. I'm not talking about all the stuff that could be happening in Europe or the Middle East or America or anywhere else in the world. I'm actually talking about a lot of people are coming, especially one-to-one clients, are talking about that they're finding themselves in a position where they've got a lot of choices. So that's not how they talk about it, by the way. It's usually it comes in overwhelm. And how they're seeing those how they would be dialoguing those with turbulent times is that they've got a lot of things to decide, whether it's to do with where they're living or how they're living, whether it's to do with who they're living with, and the changes that can be going on there, whether to stay in work, whether to develop their business, whether to drop work and go full-time in the business, close the business, go back full-time. There seems to be a lot of choices coming up for people around that, which for them is creating a lot of, or they are creating for themselves, I would say, quite a lot of turbulence, quite a lot of upset, worry, overwhelm, frustration, stress, tension, depression, worries, fears, etc. about all of that kind of thing. if you think that you are somebody who is experiencing that side of things, it'd be fantastic for you to just drop your name and say, yes, I'm experiencing that too. Or if you want to share a little bit more, then please do. And also something I haven't said, I do think something in my dinner is kind of stuck. I do apologise. That the more kind of likes and shares, remember you can share and invite people to this video, is that helps this reach more people. And one of my ambitions is to share this information with as many people as possible, because I know the difference that this kind of information has made to my life. So thank you, Becky. I know that it's obviously with that, yes, it's resonating with you, which is great. And I've nearly pressed the wrong button, and doing all the likes and everything as well, which is fantastic. So going crazy with them. I'm loving it, Becky. Keep them coming, and everybody else as well. I know that from my perspective, so in the last, for me personally, in the last, how long would I say? The last 6 months, I think pretty much most things that many people go through, I've been experiencing in different formats. So with people being ill, sadly people dying, relationships ending, contracts being big, opportunities for big contracts, opportunities with contracts not happening from a work perspective. Oh gosh, what else? Family members being ill, people going in and out of hospital, moving house. There are so many things that have been going on. And on top of that, I know that I can get very caught up in, I'm quite good at staying away from the news. However, what I've noticed that because I use social media, as I am right now, as a way of reaching out, I know with the information that I share, that means I'm interacting on social media probably more than I would do. And therefore, people are sharing news, people are commenting on it, people are bringing that to the table. So I'm probably seeing more of that now than I would have done before. Now, I know that if what I've experienced over the last 6 months and the intensity of it all, or the speed at which it's all been happening, if I had not have been where I am now, i.e. done the work and learned new different ways of dealing with things, I can pretty much guarantee that I would be, oh gosh, I would have been a mess. I probably would have been under the duvet with a big box of Maltesers, or probably a bottle of wine, or 7 actually, and gosh knows what else, and not being in a great place, and certainly not have been able to maintain a business, a healthy lifestyle, and taking care of myself in that process. And I think that's one of the key things that I want to share with you, is when we've got these I labelled it turbulent times because that's how somebody described it to me the other day when they were talking about their own life and all these different things that were going on. And they described it as this is just this turbulent life. There's nothing, there doesn't seem to be anything to hang on to. And I think that that's one of the things that I would like to suggest, is that part of the challenge is that we're looking for things to be certain. We're looking for things to be a certain way at a certain time in the way that we want them to be, and kind of and have control over it. So for many of us, not all of us, because I don't know the age range of those of you that are watching, but for many of us, when we have grown up in an environment where definitely our older generations, even if you're not my age, spoke about this world where you got a job, or you went into a career or a profession, and that was it. That was it for life. You had that for life. And I can remember my dad saying that at one point, and he would only have been sort of like 17, 18, I think, is that he was doing a particular job and he really didn't like it. So he packed up everything and he walked out that day and walked into another job. And things were that easy at that period of time. And we don't live in a society, we don't live in a world where that kind of certainty, that kind of level of control exists anymore. It's shifted, things have changed. And I think part of the reason we struggle, or we can end up struggling and end up perceiving things as being stressful or turbulent or frustrating, is because we hanker after that stability, that structure, that certainty of things being a certain way. Is this making sense? Is this resonating with people? Let me know either with thumbs up or hearts or confused. There isn't a confused emoji. Maybe there needs to be a confused or a thoughtful emoji. There you go. I'll just do one. We can freeze frame that one, put that on there. But when we are, let me know, by the way, if that's making sense. When we get caught up in thinking that things have to be a certain way and that's all that can go on, is that when things aren't that way. Hi Tam. When things aren't that way, we can then end up stressing and gets our body, because there's a conflict. In here, we have a conflict with how things are and how we think they should be, for whatever reason and whatever reason that thing is. And that creates that conflict. And that conflict only has to exist in here. It doesn't even have to exist outside of ourselves. But, I don't want it to be like this, but it is like this. But I don't want it to be like this. What can I do to change it? I have to change it. And that's going to create a conflict, going to create that internal turbulence, that internal discomfort or upset in some way, shape or form. And I know I've said this before because it's one of my favourite quotes by Adyashanti, one of my favourite teachers. And he says, a sure way to suffer is to argue with what is. When we get into conflict with how things are, we are going to create that internal suffering, going to create that internal turbulence for ourselves. So one of the first things we need to do is is recognise that things are as they are. Now, by saying that, it isn't a case of, oh, well, they are as they are, I don't need to do anything about it, it's not my problem, I can't do anything about it, I just am, it just is what it is. And our brains, many brains, tend to go into quite a passive mode with it and think, oh, well, I can't do anything about it, it's not my problem. But my invitation would be to not go to that space and to actually look at, okay, I may not like how things are, but they are how they are. And I can't change anything about that specifically other than how I'm perceiving it. Now I'm going to use a quite personal situation with this because it's very fresh and I think it might help illustrate. Because sadly last week one of my dearest friends died, or changed residency, as somebody beautifully put it, and I like that phrase. Now, whilst she had been ill and got diagnosed in November, I don't think any of us expected it to happen at the speed at which it has happened. And certainly not I saw her on the Sunday, and sadly she passed on the Thursday. And for me personally, that was a very quick shift. Hi there, Kyla from Hawaii. How awesome is that? And I could have very easily seen that as kind of like, instead of my box being as I wanted it to be, of her always being in my life or being there for a lot longer than she has been now, I could have allowed that turbulence to kind of, and that inner conflict to really kick in of, it's not fair, that shouldn't happen to somebody like that, she's such an amazing person, how am I going to cope without her? That is that arguing with what is, arguing with that reality. Is this making sense? And if I'd have gone into that space, then I'm the person that's going to get upset. I'm going to be creating my own discomfort, upset, worry about that particular thing. And it's not going to help me. So whilst I'm obviously going to go through whatever my grieving process is and however that manifests up in the various different times, I cannot change that situation, but I can change how I'm perceiving it. I can change how I'm relating to it. Am I going to miss her? Probably. Of course I will. But actually, I can also focus on what she gifted me. By me having the time that I did with her in my life, in our lives, and as they crossed over. And by having that level of focus, rather than having that inner turbulence, that inner dialogue of things aren't the way that I want them to be, I'm accepting the situation as it is, but perceiving it in a different way, which is far more supportive, far more encouraging, far more resourceful, loving, considerate, kind, caring for me. Please let me know if this is making sense. I'm very aware that it keeps coming up saying that the connection is weak. So let me just. It seems to be coming up on this one. Okay. So let me know. Does this make sense? What are your thoughts on it? Fantastic. Thank you, Tan. I can't see who else it was that there's somebody else. That looked like Dave Turner's face. Hello, Dave, if it is you, my lovely. I couldn't quite see. They're so tiny because I'm on my phone. I found out that the phone camera is far better than my Mac camera, to be honest. Hence why I tend to broadcast from here. So the reason I share that is because it's something. Hi, it is you, Dave. Hiya. Is that I think that's something that we can all relate to, that we've all experienced that in some way, shape or form. And if we haven't yet, we will do. And it's a way of recognizing that I can't change that thing, but I can change how I'm viewing it. I can change how I am relating to it, how I am perceiving it. So therefore, when there's these turbulent times, it might be that the organisation that you're going through or that you work for or the business that you're in is having a restructure, which is something I've been working with people a lot on, and therefore that's creating these if you imagine that we've got these we have the illusion rather that we have these foundations, these strong foundations, be it our career or our home or our relationships, and we think we've got these strong foundations, and yet it doesn't take much for something to come over and wobble it. And the illusion of that being safe kind of like freaks us out. It creates that inner turbulence. It creates that inner conflict for us because we think what was solid is not solid. But when you can start with the belief that even though I think that this is forever, whatever the forever thing may be, job, relationship, whatever it may be, if I can recognise that this can shift at any point, this can change at any point, and if it did, how would I deal with that? How would I face that? Because then you can start to give yourself that, okay, well, I don't want it to, but at least I know if it did, I could deal with it. And Kyla's put, yes, totally agree. We can't change situations, but we can change how we perceive them. And I know that as Kyla works around happiness and viewing life in that way. I know this is going to resonate with you as well. I'm very jealous. You're in Hawaii. Well, Hawaii keeps popping up for me at the moment. Maybe I'm meant to go. But I can't change where I'm at right now, which is in York. Not immediately, anyway. So when we can recognise that this situation, this thing that we thought was solid and never going to change, that it will change. You know, I know this is uncomfortable for a lot of people to recognise, but when you can recognise that, when you look into nature, it doesn't matter what aspect of nature you look at, nothing is permanent. Nothing. There is nothing in nature that stays the same. Mount Etna, I believe, is erupting at this moment in time. There's perfect force of nature that is in change. Not only does it shows all of what would have been going on underneath the surface and then coming up, but then all of that outflow and where that goes to is something that changes. Well, when we can recognise that things are always going to change, that's the nature of the beast. That's life. Life is always in change. It's about focusing on getting very clear on how things are, and if they're not as you want them to be, not making them wrong for how they are in that moment, but looking what you could do to do things differently, or to change it in some way, shape or form. You can't change it, or you might be able to change it immediately, but the only thing that you can guarantee that you can change with immediacy is how you perceive it. But you've got to know how you're perceiving it in the first place. Just dislodged a bit of chili. Note to self, don't eat chili before you do a broadcast, Jules. So, what are your thoughts on what I've shared so far? What are your turbulent times, and how could you interact, or how are you creating them as turbulent times? How are you perceiving them in that way? And how could you perceive them differently? What would it take for you to perceive them differently? Give yourself a moment to jot something down. Because I know that when I focus on my fears, or when I focus on worrying, or when I focus on what I don't have, I'm very clear on how that impacts me. When I'm thinking about any of those things, I know how that is going to make me feel, regardless of what's going on outside. If I'm focusing on those things, it's me that's going to be experiencing that. It's me that's going to be feeling that discomfort. Whereas if I'm focusing on what is possible, or where I'm at, or gratitude, or anything like that, I'm going to be experiencing and feeling something very different. So Tan says, when I see an instability coming up, I get a pang of fear. I can talk myself through it and reduce my anxiety level, but I feel like the initial pang of fear is harmful to my feeling of well-being. Is there a way to have less fear or change it to something less intrusive? What a fantastic share, Tan, and also great question as well. So, as I think I've mentioned before, how I perceive things is that fear kind of comes in two spaces. So we've got primal fear, which is that fear of that fight, flight, or freeze that is going to kick in. If we genuinely are physically in danger in some way, shape, or form, we don't have to think about that. We don't have to think I'm afraid of, because that mechanism kicks in and will do whatever it can to protect us. The other kind of fear is psychological fear, and I think quite often, and especially how you've phrased it there, Tan, is that psychological fear is made up. We've constructed it, and you can see it very clearly with what you've written. So you've put, when I see an instability coming up, I get a pang of fear. So if you're seeing an instability coming up, that's something in the future. That's not now. That's a perceived, that's an idea, that's a possibility. So you're perceiving it, so therefore the fear that then gets created, which, don't get me wrong, I do appreciate could feel very, very real. But that fear that comes up is one that's created through thinking. So a process that I use for myself is that if I notice that come up, is the first thing I do is I allow myself to genuinely know that I am safe. I am physically safe. So therefore I can get clarity, my brain gets clarity that it's not a primal fear. I don't have to be on alert and fight, flight, or freeze rather. And actually I can then get clear on, okay, so let me ask for myself, what is it specifically that I'm afraid of? And quite often we'll come up with quite generalized statements, such as I'm afraid of failing, or I'm afraid of getting it wrong, or I'm afraid of success, or I'm afraid of getting embarrassed or humiliated. When you hear those, drill down a little bit more to get clarity on that, so that you can start to hear the thinking that's creating that fear. So then ask yourself, what would be a more helpful thought to have at this moment in time? Because how I perceive it at the moment is we live in a world of duality where, you can't have up without down, you can't have left without right, or it's probably showing up on Facebook the other way around. You've got to have night, you can't have night without day, and so on and so forth. So therefore, if there is this fear it could go wrong, then, and that's what, it's going to go wrong, then there has to be the possibility that it could go right too. Or I'm going to get embarrassed. Well, what if I get validation or love? Or what if it's going to go, if I'm going to be able to go, I can't think of any others at the moment, but I'm sure you get the picture. It's if you've got both, look for both. Always look for the opposite. And it's giving your brain the encouragement that both exist. It's not either or. It's and. They both exist. But then it's about encouraging your brain to choose which one's going to be most resourceful, or helpful for you at that moment in time. Does that answer your question, Tan? Does that give you something to play around with? If you're still on here, then let me know, or give me a thumbs up or hearts, or go crazy on the likes, whatever it may be. And for the rest of you that are watching live, is this making sense? Is this giving you an insight of how you could deal with life in what we perceive as turbulent times? Does this give you something to practice? A way of looking at things in a different way? So Tan's put, I love that idea that there has to be an expectation of going right. Well, why not? Why do we assume, it's only through conditioning that we assume that things have to go wrong? It's not just you that has a negative filter. It's unfortunately, it's become, I think that part of the psychological mind and the primal mind, or psychological mind and the primal brain rather, have kind of got intertwined. And so therefore, just as the primal mind is primed for survival to keep us safe, the psychological mind thinks it has to do the same thing. So therefore it is on high alert as to what could go wrong. But what if you fail? I don't want you to get it wrong, so don't even go there. Don't even venture that way. So it's kind of primed to go that way. But your job is to show it that there's more than one way. That there is more than one way. That it can go in all sorts of different ways. And both of those, because you're talking about the future, are made up. Perception in that sense of looking at the imagination of, well, I've got this instability coming up. Well, it's not here right now, so therefore you must be imagining it. And if you're imagining it going wrong, then you can imagine it going right as well. And both of them are made up. And as my coach would say to me, if you're going to make shit up, make good shit up. It's a technical term, but he is Australian, so we allow him to use technical terms, as if I could stop anyway. So it is about recognising that there are both options there. So with the key thing that I wanted to also make sure that those of you who are watching live and those of you that are watching on the recording as well, that you get, is that we have a choice. We have a choice of whether we perceive the time that we're in as turbulent or not. We have a choice as to how we interact with that, how we talk about it, how we dialogue it. It's our choice. And I suppose my question, my offering, my invitation is, how could you perceive the time that you're in, no matter what you've got going on, but perceive it in a way that is helpful to you, that is supportive of you, that is constructive for you? What's going to be the most helpful way for you to perceive that situation, that particular time? So, is there anything else from what I've been sharing so far, since it's already coming up to 7:30, I can't believe that. Is there anything else that you would like to ask or share or comment on what we've spoken about this evening, what the conversation has been about tonight? And what I would love to know really is, what's your one takeaway? What's the insight or piece of information that you can take away from this video, this live broadcast tonight, that is going to make the biggest difference for you? So just drop that down there, because it would be fantastic to know, because then your brain has got something it can hang on to with regards what is a way for you to handle turbulent times. So what is that one way? I'll give you a moment to type, because if you're anything like me on a phone, then typing on a phone is not a speedy thing. And if anybody's just joined us live, they'll be thinking that the picture's frozen then. So Tana says, for me, it will definitely be realising that if I can imagine it going wrong, I can also imagine it going right. I'm speedy because I'm using my computer. Excellent. Thank you, Tan. and I won't wind it up immediately, but if you are still typing, please carry on. And also, if you're watching this on the recording, please do let me know if this makes sense for you. This particular, I deliberately didn't do, for those of you who watch regularly, you'll know that I don't always do and then do this, and this is a how-to, and but, kind of like those bite-sized nuggets that you can take away and do immediately. Because I want us to have a conversation. I want this to be a realization that life isn't a 3-step process or a 12-step process, or that there are so many different aspects to it. There's different ways of coming in, and there's so many ways of understanding and looking at things in a way that's resourceful for you. And that's the purpose of having a conversation, as opposed to it being and then do this and then do this and then do this, which sometimes I know I do. I'm a little bit all over the place this evening, as you can probably imagine, or tell rather. So next week I will, again, this session will actually be on the Tuesday. It wasn't meant to be a Tuesday this week, as I said at the start. It was actually meant to be last night, but I didn't get back in time to be able to do the broadcast live. The traffic was not going to let that happen. But next week, it will be next Tuesday, so whatever that is, the 5th, I believe. No, the 7th. Good Lord. So it will already, next Tuesday, be the 7th of March, and it'll be the same time. But I would love to know what it is that you would really like to have a conversation about. What is the thing that is going to make that time that we've got together next Tuesday, whether you watch it live or whether you come on to the recording, is what's going to make the biggest difference for you? What's a challenge that you've got in your life that you're kind of struggling with, for want of a better phrase, at this moment in time? Or what's frustrating you that you'd really like some insights or guidance or some coaching around? Because that's what this is about. And you can either put your thoughts underneath here, because obviously I will get notification and I can look at those. Or if you would rather not be named and you want to do it anonymously, then you can message me on this page, on the Confidence Garden page, or you can email me, jules@juleswyman.com. And if you want to keep anonymous, then I'm more than happy to do that. That's no problem at all. But the point of it is being and doing whatever I can to support you with where you're at. If I don't know where you're at, then I can only talk from where I'm coming from at this moment in time. So I hope that you found some value in this evening's conversation. If you have, then please do let me know by doing some thumbs up or some hearts or what the other emojis are. It'd be fantastic to know whether it's resonated with you. And also to remember that you can share the videos. That's the purpose of them. On the page you'll find, you can go back, there's the video tab, and you can go back and watch. Thank you, there's loads coming in now. But there's loads of more videos. This is the episode 51, so there's plenty of for you to go back and have a listen to. Thank you. There's tons of hearts coming in now. This is awesome. But yeah, remember that you can share. Remember that this is about reaching out to as many people as possible. And for me, the more I can get an understanding of where you're at and what your needs are, then we can have that conversation. And just a reminder, there are 2 events coming up in March. Both of them are in York. The first one is this Saturday, and then the second one is on the following Sunday, the 12th of March. And that's also in York, but it's the full day. So I will post the information about both of the events. But something I want to make clear is that if you would love to be able to get to one of the events and you're further away or you don't live in the York area, then if you would like me to come and do an event in your area, then message me and let me know. If you can get 12 or more people together and cover my expenses, then we can look at putting an event on in your area. So I think that's about everything covered for this evening. I'll put the links for the events below once I get off the call so that I'm not kind of like looking in two different directions at once. But thank you so much for joining this evening. Thank you for all the thumbs up and the hearts and the insights. Thank you for your shares and getting some insights where that's concerned. We've obviously had right the way from Hawaii, Tan, I think you're possibly in the States, I can't remember, right the way across the UK as well. So thank you very much for joining this evening, and I look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday, remember, next Tuesday, the 7th of March, and I'll see you then. Bye.